It's funny how a storm can make you feel safe. You're wrapped in a blanket. The rain is tapping softly on the roof of the porch. The fire crackles beside you. Beyond the railing, the driveway winds down into darkness, a ribbon of wet gravel vanishing into the trees. I used to love nights like this, until the one I'm about to tell you about. It was 3 years ago, in late October. The storm had been raging for hours, heavy sheets of rain sweeping through the valley. The wind moaned through the pines, and every now and then, thunder rolled so deep it rattled the windows. I'd been sitting on this very porch, same blanket, same chair, sipping tea, when I saw him. A figure, standing just at the very edge of the driveway, still, unmoving. At first I thought it was a trick of the light. The rain was heavy, and the shadows from the porch lamp stretched strange and thin. But when the lightning flashed, I saw him clearly. A man, tall, wearing a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat. His face hidden in shadow. I remember leaning forward, squinting through the rain. He didn't move, didn't raise a hand, didn't shout, just stood there. My first thought was that maybe his car had broken down, but there was no car, no sound of an engine. Only the rain, only him. I called out, "Hey, you all right out there?" Nothing. Not even a twitch. The fire popped beside me. The thunder groaned in the distance, and I realized something about the way he stood was wrong. Too still, not bracing against the wind, not hunching against the cold, just still. I stood, walked to the railing. The rain ran down my face, cold against my skin. I was about to call again when the next lightning flash came, and he was closer, halfway up the driveway. I swear to you, I never saw him move, not a single step. He was just there. My heart slammed in my chest. I stepped back into the glow of the firelight. Another flash, closer. Now just at the foot of the porch steps. I could see the rain running off his coat, the brim of his hat dripping, his head tilted slightly, as if he was studying me. But still, no face, just black shadow. I stumbled backwards, grabbed the door handle, and that's when I saw it. His hands. They weren't hands at all. Long, pale shapes. Too many fingers. Moving slightly like they were tasting the air. I threw the door open, slammed it shut behind me. My dog, the most fearless German shepherd I've ever owned, was in the corner, whining, ears flat, refusing to look at the door. For the rest of the night, I sat in the living room with the lights on, the fire dead in the hearth, listening to the rain. Every so often, there'd be a faint creak from the porch boards. When morning came, I opened the door. There was no sign of him, no footprints on the porch, only a small puddle of rainwater at the top of the steps, and a faint, wet handprint, too long, too thin, pressed into the wood.
The rain had been falling for hours. It wasn't the kind of gentle drizzle that rocks you to sleep. This was the heavy, steady rain that turns the world into a gray blur, with each drop hitting the porch roof like the ticking of an endless clock. Inside, I sat in my old wooden rocking chair, a mug of coffee warming my hands. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, battling against the chill creeping in from the storm outside. It was just past midnight, the kind of hour when the world feels different, quieter, lonelier, and sometimes stranger. I had been living in this cabin for only 3 months. It sat far back from the main road, hidden by dense pines. The nearest neighbor was almost a mile away, and in weather like this, it might as well have been another world. I told myself I liked the solitude. That's why I came here, away from the city, away from people, away from the noise. But solitude plays tricks on you, especially at night. That was when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It was faint at first. So faint, I thought it might have been the wind pushing something against the porch. But then it came again. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. I froze, mug halfway to my lips. It's after midnight, in the middle of a storm. Who would be out here? I set the mug down quietly and listened. The rain was loud, but my ears picked out the sound again. 3 knocks, always 3. Slow, even, patient. 1,000 possibilities raced through my mind. A lost traveler, a broken-down car, maybe even a neighbor in trouble. But there was something about the rhythm of that knock that made my skin crawl. I stood and walked to the door, every floorboard groaning beneath my feet. I didn't turn on the porch light right away. Instead, I looked through the small peephole in the door. Nothing. Just the dark shape of the porch railing and the rain blowing sideways in the wind. I hesitated, then flicked on the porch light. The bulb buzzed and flickered to life, casting a warm glow across the wet boards. Empty. I opened the door just a crack. The storm's breath rushed in, cold and damp. Still, there was no one there. I stepped out, scanning the yard. The rain had softened the ground into thick mud. I thought maybe I'd see footprints, but the porch and yard were clean. No marks, no signs anyone had been there. I shut the door, locking it tight. It was probably nothing. A branch in the wind. My imagination. I tried to convince myself of that until 10 minutes later. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder. I jumped from my chair, heart hammering. I didn't even bother with the peephole. I yanked the curtain back from the front window. Empty. The knocking stopped the instant I looked outside, and that's when I noticed something else. The rain was silent. Not softer, silent. The pounding on the roof, the hiss of it on the trees, all of it had stopped. The world outside was completely still, as if someone had pressed pause on the storm. And in that unnatural quiet, I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Only this time it wasn't coming from the door. It was coming from the back of the house.
The first time I left Hollow Creek, I swore I'd never come back. That was 20 years ago. Even as I drove down the narrow, winding road that led back to the place, I couldn't believe I was doing it. The trees leaned in from both sides, their branches heavy with rain. The sky hung low and dark, swallowing the last bit of daylight. Every bump in the road felt like a question. Why are you here? Why now? The answer wasn't simple. It was my uncle's house, or what was left of it. He died 2 months ago. They said it was an accident. They found him in the woods, less than a mile from the old Hollow Creek Bridge. The official story was exposure, as if he had just wandered off and gotten lost. But my uncle wasn't the type to just wander. The thing is, nobody in Hollow Creek dies out in those woods by accident.
The rain was heavy by the time I pulled into the driveway. The cabin sat exactly as I remembered it. Sagging porch, peeling paint, and a roof patched in more places than I could count. As I stepped out of the car, the smell hit me. Wet pine, rotting leaves, and something else, something metallic, faint but sharp. Inside, the house felt frozen in time. The same creaky floorboards, the same oil lamp on the kitchen counter, even the same old rocking chair in the corner, facing the window that looked out toward the creek. It was that chair I noticed first, because it was rocking slowly, back and forth, even though the air was still.
Hollow Creek's past. When I was a kid, My uncle used to tell me stories about Hollow Creek. Not the kind you find in history books. These were whispers passed down by the people who had lived here long before the roads were paved. The story always started the same. The creek isn't just water, it's a line, a thin one, and sometimes things cross it. They said the woods here were old, older than the town, older than the people. And if you went near the water at night, you might see lights under the surface. Not reflections, not fireflies, something else. I never believed him until the summer I turned 15. That was when I saw the lights for myself.
The first night. I should have unpacked, but instead I built a fire and sat listening to the rain. The sound was steady and hypnotic, but underneath it, I kept hearing something else. At first, it was just a soft drip, like water falling from a height and hitting something hollow. Then, slowly, it became a voice. It was faint, like someone speaking underwater. The words were impossible to make out, but the tone was urgent, almost pleading. I stepped to the window, pulling the curtain aside. The rain had slowed to a mist. Through the trees, I could just barely see the creek. It was glowing. The walk to the creek. I should have stayed inside. I know that now. But something in that glow pulled at me, like a thread wrapping around my thoughts, tugging me closer. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped off the porch. The mud sucked at my boots as I made my way through the trees. The air grew colder with every step. When I reached the bank, I saw them. The lights. Dozens of them, drifting just beneath the surface of the water, moving slowly, almost lazily, like they were waiting. And then one rose up. It broke the surface, and I realized it wasn't a light at all. It was an eye. The return. I woke up back in the cabin. My boots were still muddy. My flashlight still in my hand. I had no memory of walking back. But I wasn't alone. The rocking chair was moving again, faster this time. And from the direction of the creek, I heard footsteps. Wet, heavy, getting closer. The opening, the road back. The first time I left Hollow Creek, I swore I would never come back. That was 20 years ago. Even as I drove the narrow road that twisted down into the valley, I kept telling myself this was a mistake. The forest leaned in on both sides, the branches bending low as if they were trying to block my way. The sky above was heavy, the kind of gray that seems to press down on you. Every bump in the road felt like the land itself asking me a question. Why are you here? Why now? The answer wasn't simple. It was my uncle's house, or what was left of it, the cabin unchanged. The rain was coming down hard when I pulled into the driveway. The cabin sat there just as I remembered, leaning forward as though it had aged under the weight of the years. Stepping inside was like stepping into another time. The same floorboards creaked beneath my feet. The same lamp sat on the counter, and in the far corner, the same rocking chair. It was moving slowly, back and forth, even though the air was still. I told myself it was just my imagination, or maybe the floor settling. But deep down, I already knew better. When I was a boy, my uncle told me things about Hollow Creek that didn't sound real. Stories the old folks whispered when they thought no one was listening. They said the creek wasn't just water, it was a line, a thin one, and sometimes things crossed it. Lights under the surface, not reflections, not fireflies, something else. The summer I turned 15, I saw them for myself. Small drifting shapes glowing in the current. I never forgot the way they seemed to look at me without eyes.
That night in the cabin, I built a fire and listened to the rain. It should have been peaceful, but beneath the crackle of the flames, I heard something. At first it was a drip, water falling onto something hollow. Then the sound shifted. A voice, faint, like it was coming from beneath a river. The words were impossible to make out, just an urgent, muffled rhythm. I stepped to the window. Through the mist, I'd see the creek. It was glowing. I should have stayed inside, but something about that glow pulled at me, like a thread in my mind tugging me closer. The ground sucked at my boots as I crossed the wet earth. The closer I got, the colder it became. And then I saw them, the lights, drifting lazily under the surface, moving together as though they were waiting. One of them rose toward me. It broke the surface, and I saw it wasn't a light at all. It was an eye. I woke up back in the cabin. No memory of walking back. My boots still wet. My flashlight still in my hand. The rocking chair was moving again, faster now. And from outside, footsteps, wet, slow, coming closer. The next day, I searched the cabin for answers. In my uncle's desk, I found a journal.
The entries were frantic. Drawings of the creek, notes about voices in the water, and pages covered in repeating phrases. Once they see you, you can't leave. The last entry was dated the day before he died. It said only, "If I follow them tonight, maybe I'll see her again."
That night, I didn't sleep. Around midnight, the rain stopped, and in the silence, I heard them. Voices. Not one, but many, all speaking at once. I stepped onto the porch. The creek was brighter than before, and standing in the water were shapes. Human shapes. Pale, still, their faces blurred, but I knew them. People who had disappeared from Hollow Creek years ago. People who were dead. One of them stepped forward, a woman. Her eyes were black, like the deepest part of the water. She spoke without moving her mouth. "You came back. We've been waiting." The air around me thickened. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. She reached out, and when her hand touched mine, everything went dark.
I woke up on the cabin floor. It was morning. The fire had gone cold. Outside, the world was quiet. No birds, no wind, just the slow sound of water, trickling where the creek should have been rushing. When I went to the window,
The creek was gone. In its place was dry earth and a narrow, winding path disappearing into the trees. I should have left that morning, packed the car, driven until the forest was just a memory, but I didn't. The path is still there, waiting, and every night I hear the voices, clearer now, calling my name. I think I'll follow them tonight. If you ever come to Hollow Creek, don't go near the water, because once you return, the creek keeps you.
Next story. The Last Room in Ravenshade Inn. I was halfway through a cross-country road trip when the storm hit. The rain came down in heavy sheets, turning the highway into a mirror of swirling water. My wipers thrashed uselessly against the downpour, and the headlights barely reached the yellow lines on the road. Somewhere in the blackness, a weathered sign flickered. Ravenshade Inn, vacancy. It was the only light for miles. I pulled into the gravel drive, tires crunching, and there it was. An old Victorian building with dark windows and a single lamp burning on the porch. The rain made the paint look even more faded, streaking down like tears. When I stepped inside, the smell hit me first. Old wood, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Behind the desk sat a thin woman in a faded dress. Her eyes were pale, almost clouded, but they never left my face. "Only one room left," she said. "Top floor, end of the hall." She slid a brass key across the counter. It was ice cold in my hand. As I climbed the creaking staircase, the inn seemed to grow quieter with each step, as if I was leaving the world behind. The hallway was long, lit by a single bulb that buzzed overhead. Faded wallpaper peeled at the corners. My room, room 6, had a warped wooden door with a lock that looked older than the inn itself. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. The furniture was heavy and antique, and a single window looked out over the black forest beyond. A storm gust rattled the glass. I dropped my bag and noticed something strange. The room had no mirror. That night, the storm grew worse. Thunder rolled so close it rattled the bed frame, and lightning lit up the walls in sharp flashes. Around midnight, I heard it. A slow knock on my door. 3 knocks, measured, hollow. I froze. The knocks came again. "Who's there?" I called, my voice tight. Silence. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, except for a faint, wet footprint on the wooden floor. It led away toward the stairs, then simply stopped, as if the person had vanished mid-step. The next morning, the woman at the desk watched me too closely as I returned the key to go get breakfast. I asked about the footprint. Her lips tightened. "No one should be knocking on your door," she said flatly. "Best to ignore it." I walked into town later and spoke to a shopkeeper. When I mentioned the Ravenshade Inn, his expression changed. "That place, son, you should leave tonight." He leaned in closer. "Room 6 has been empty for years. The man who stayed there last never left. Not really."
That evening, the storm returned. The air felt heavier, almost charged, like the moments before a lightning strike. By midnight, I was sitting in bed with the lamp on, listening to the rain. That's when I heard it again. The knock. 3 slow knocks. Only this time, it came from inside the room. I turned
and my stomach turned to ice. The closet door, the one I hadn't opened since I arrived, was slowly swinging forward. From the darkness inside, a pale hand gripped the frame. I stumbled back, heart slamming, as a figure stepped out. A man, or what used to be a man, dressed in water-stained clothes, skin gray and eyes hollow. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, water dripping from his hair onto the floor. "It's my room." I ran. The hallway stretched far longer than I remembered, every step echoing. The stairs seemed endless. When I burst into the lobby, the woman at the desk didn't even look surprised. "You saw him," she said quietly. "Now you understand." I drove into the storm without looking back. The next morning, I stopped for gas miles away. Out of habit, I glanced at the back seat. The passenger seat was wet.
The last story. The thing at the window. It was close to 3 a.m. when I woke up without knowing why. The rain was steady against the window, the fire in the corner still glowing faintly. I lay there for a moment, thinking maybe a dream had pulled me awake. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I turned toward the sound, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. At first, I thought it was just a branch swaying in the wind, hitting the glass. But there were no trees near that side of the house. I sat up slowly, my blanket still wrapped around me. The tapping stopped. Then a shadow moved across the outside of the window. The glass was fogged from the inside, but a faint outline pressed against it. A face, pale, long, and wrong somehow, as though it had been stretched too thin. The eyes were pitch black, absorbing every bit of light. I couldn't move. My breath fogged the glass from my side now, and for a moment it felt like our breaths were touching through the pane. Then it smiled. Not a warm smile, a smile that felt like hunger. I scrambled back, tripping over the rug, knocking over the chair. The thing didn't move, just kept watching. Lightning flashed, and it was gone. I rushed to the window and looked out into the rain-soaked yard. Empty, quiet, only the wind. I told myself it had to be my imagination. But this morning, when I opened the curtains, there was a handprint on the glass from the outside, and it was too high for any person to reach. If you enjoyed this chilling tale, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that will keep you up at night. Until next time, keep your curtains closed.